Hey guys, it's Mo from Mo in the Deep End, up early this morning to give you guys the murder board as promised from the Austin Fords, or as I'm calling it, the best friends forever. And come on, you guys, if you were a 90s kids, it's the forever, ever, forever, ever. I'm sorry, Miss Jackson. Look, if you're from the Zoomer generation, look it up. It's a great song. I'm just saying. And let me get the remote. And I am not in the frame because I'm currently dyeing my hair and it is 5:20 on a Sunday. And let's be honest, there are things that the internet still doesn't pay people to see. But before we get into this case does deal with possible self deletion. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about if you are feeling like, you are at a certain place in your life where you need to talk to someone. I know there are hotlines. Talk to a friend, talk to a family member. Please, please, please. I know we joke, I know we talk about shenanigans here. Don't suffer in silence. Say something in chat. Say something to someone. Reach out to someone. Look, days look really dark, believe me. They look super duper dark sometimes. But they will get better little by little. I mean, just stay here. People will miss you. I promise. I promise things will get better. If they don't look like it now, I promise there is something to stay here for. So, with that out of the way, I figured we would start out today, in light of that, with the possible victim, possible, well, self deletion person in this case. And that is Tori Lang. So she was found in Yellow River Park with a gunshot wound to her head. She was a very promising, graduate of high school. She had done very well in high school. Now, she was struggling during the pandemic, trying to find work. Future college plans had kind of been derailed because of, obviously the unspeakable virus of unknown origins, as you will. It happens. And as girls sometimes do, we get a little sidelined with, boys. We maybe find us a bad boy and we get a little sidetracked. So, in her body was found 2 times the regular amount of phentermine. And phentermine is actually a controlled substance. It is typically doctor prescribed and used at therapeutic levels as a sort of diet or appetite suppressant. As a fluffy nation, I'm sure it's prescribed a lot. Now, Tory Lang was best friends with Austin Ford, and he will come into our story a little later. But because of the kind of the sensitivity of this story and the possible dealing with this young lady maybe struggling with mental health and possible self-deletion, I wanted to start with her first. So she was, maybe dealing with feeling like her plans in her life was being sidetracked. So she'd written many letters to God, asking for wealth, asking for wisdom, asking for, you know, money, for why why is my life going off tracks? And as an adult human being with 6 small children going through e-learning, I had a immensely hard time dealing with the virus of unspeakable name. So I can't imagine what it would be like to be a new high school graduate thinking my future was all ahead of me and then having everything sidelined by this. Now, according to the first trial, the mother did talk about a 72-hour or possible 48-hour hold that Tori had been on because she had been. Now, the records weren't quite clear, but it seemed as though, inferring wise, that she had been abusing some sort of substance and maybe had an ill reaction to it. Now, in her letters to God, in my reading, Now, according to this state, she sounded like he made it sound like she wanted just wealth and prosperity. When I was listening to the reading, and perhaps you'll get a different, you got a different read on it if you go and listen to the case and listen to the court trial. But when I was listening to it, it sounded like a young woman who was looking for answers. And unfortunately, with faith, with God, he doesn't answer directly. He doesn't give us those, like post-it notes from heaven, which would be awesome because, that would be great. But he doesn't. Unfortunately, sometimes he gives us the people around us, and he kind of gives us the people that are trying to give us to do right, like sharp dressed granny below, which we'll get into, but he he kind of gives us guidelines on how to live our life correctly, but if we kind of step outside those guidelines and kind of start acting wild, which we will get into, you know, it it's like when you talk to a kid and they're like and so my oldest son started, like a basketball league, and it's just intramural, and he was playing with kids that had played basketball since they were 4, and he's like, "Why am I not as good as them?" Well, because they had been practicing since they were 4. He didn't get that he didn't had to practice more than once a week to be really good. So, it's a hard lesson to learn that you have to put in the time, that you have to act right, and, you know, put into life what you want to get out of life, and I think, unfortunately, she was having a hard time dealing with the consequences of that because it seemed like there was a lot of kind of testing boundaries with family members, kind of acting wild, going out, you know, co in having the bad boy relationship, it seemed like maybe she was testing boundaries, staying out late, acting wild, maybe doing some of the, devil's lettuce, if you will, and other things of that nature. And it seemed like maybe she was a little more invested in that relationship than her boyfriend was, which, can be devastating if you find that out. Now, couple that with the fact that phentermine, if you're taking it at that level, can cause mood swings and depression. And if you're already prone to depression, this can be a really dangerous combination. Now, unfortunately, none of us know what happened in that park. None of us know. And unfortunately, our next character in our cast of characters is Austin Ford, a young person who seems to talk but doesn't seem to often tell the truth, which will come to bite him in the butt. I believe it's again time in our lovely class of criminology to remind you all to not talk to the police unless you have a lawyer. And before Lefty says it, I do have a level. In fact, everything is level on my board. I think it's my camera that it is level, but it's on a diagonal. So I need to see if Mr. Mo, when he is available, can figure out so it's not wonkified. But Austin Ford and Tory Lang, I think the way it was described, and y'all, I don't know how young people's call dating anymore. So they were talking, dating, hanging out. They were boyfriend, girlfriend for a little bit, but then it just developed into a friendship, maybe even best friendship. Um, Now, he stated that Scoop, and that's her boyfriend, wasn't as in to the relationship as Tori. He was 17 at the time. He, I guess, played semi-pro, 17 or 18. It was kinda hard to get a read on that, and the recordings in that courtroom of both interviews and cell phone interviews from this gentleman, despite the fact that he talked to anything with boobs for hours and hours, were horrendous. So, Godspeed to the jury who had to listen to them a bajillion times. He was apparently playing semi-pro football at the time or thereabouts, living with his girlfriend and her son. He claimed that Tori was upset with a lot of the things that I kinda described at the beginning, money, family, her future, her boyfriend. His story was that Tori came to his house first to buy some wacky tobacco, as you do, and, through the world's most complicated drug buy, I have no the parts of the recording I could hear, not having done this in my high school years, I can only imagine that this was like an Mission Impossible level, transaction because of the amount of talking that the man did to procure this. But she went away, did this, came back, asked for money to go find someone to Agent 41 her, if you will. He told her, "No, don't do this." Somehow they both ended up in the car in the park with her mother's weapon. While they were in the park, um, they were wrestling for the weapon. He thought he got it away from her. She reached over, got the weapon, and shot herself. He panicked, um, kinda ran around, fiddle farted, took the weapon, took the car, left, threw the weapon in a pond. It has never been found. Now, he claims he didn't torch the car, but the car ended up torched in another kind of nature reserve. Now, the man and he is a man now, and, you know, unfortunately 17, and when you start dealing with some of these adult situations, this is where you forge your character, so I'm sorry, Mr. Ford, you did not choose a man of honor, way and path forward. He was slimy as hell, he lied to the family, he lied directly to the mother, which y'all have seen the mother, if you've seen the case. I am darn near 40 years old. That woman would have terrified the living snot out of me. So, but sharp dressed granny, I could not lie to that woman. I could not lie to that woman. I would have had to go up to her and tell her the truth. But mama, no, I would not want to meet mama on a dark, cold street. That's just all I got to say about that. Um, so r regardless of how the particular incident happened, he still did not behave like a man of honor, and I think that is so slimy and so what's going to convict him in the court of public opinion for a long, long time. And the fact that he did talk to look, I know she has a real name, and y'all, if you're a feminist, come after me. I got boobs too, so just, I have a boobs past. He talked to Detective Boobs and talked and talked and talked, okay? She put on a Steve Buscemi, welcome fellow kids, you know, inner city affect edition, and he just did all the talking without a lawyer. Again, we are in the part of the stream where I remind you that you need a lawyer. Because had this gentleman maybe talked to a lawyer prior to going in and spilling his ever living guts and saying the words assisted suicide in any of his damned, 9 hours of talking on a speak and spell recording through a ham sandwich, he could have possibly gotten away with it. Teresa Lang is Tory Lang's mother, and I only saw her testimony from the first trial. And she came off very well during the state, but during cross and y'all, she lost her baby. First, I can her mother's heart is grieving, and From the bottom of my mother's heart, I get that. The fact that it was her own weapon that was used, I am so sorry, and there are no words. Um, but even giving all the grace that I can through that lens, she did not appear through that trial or for that first trial during cross to come off as credible. She talked about, Tori being placed on a hospital, hold for something, and then during this trial, it changed to she had fainted, and again, while it is totally, totally understandable that this mother would rather that, Tori simply, was unalived by her friend rather than, she didn't see that her daughter was suffering, that she didn't see that these, you know, wild acting out behaviors were a reaction to her feeling like her life was going out of control and nowhere, and she was deeply depressed, and, these were signs that she was missing. You know, I really I have an issue with also having, as slimy as he may be for lying to her and to her face, which dude better pull up stakes and have his head on a swivel, allegedly, 'cause that this mama don't look like she plays, okay? That being said, you can't one life isn't going to equal out another, so if you take this young gentleman's life, you're not going to bring back your daughters, and I don't know that it's going to bring the peace that you think it will. Now, that being said, I haven't walked in her shoes, but that's about all I have to say about her, and then we come to Wish Uncle Phil, the state's prosecutor, and, he started off and he seemed fairly competent, he seemed okay. He was a little bit more stiff and formal, which against the foil of having the very Steve Harvey and very kind of congenial, conversational, very just informal and, like, talk just very down to earth lawyer that the defense had, he almost looked all the more stiff and kind of formal and just by the books. But as the case went on and he was challenging his own state's medical examiner on her findings, he became he seemed much more condescending, much more arrogant, just ugh. He did also lose the argument on the directed verdict for, oh gosh, was it? For manslaughter 1, I believe, and it's in Georgia, manslaughter has to be man 1 has to be preceded by an act of passion, so basically an act of passion or a crime of passion, so he had to prove that, um, Austin did this because, he found Tori cheating or Tori stole a bunch of something from him, basically got him so mad that it overrode his function, so while he did it, it was still within a diminished capacity because he was super de duper, you know, enraged. And perhaps he would have been a better lawyer without the foil of super awesome lawyer who I love. That's probably, what would have happened. Now, he did do something kind of slimy where it is within the rules that in Georgia, the state can waive its first opening or its first closing argument, kind of I call it its opening closing argument, and just do the rebuttal after the defense goes, but it just seems slimy, and I don't like it, and I don't like Wish Uncle Phil. So, Now, the defense really doesn't like Wish Uncle Phil, so and we will get into that. I don't know if he had just so we are going to go to first, the also Best Dressed award goes to I'm going to get this for the love of Cheetos. Well, Sharp Dressed Granny. Now, Sharp Dressed Granny is Tori's grandmother, and now, ma'am, I want to be you when I grow up. She understood the assignment dressed for court, okay? Top to bottom, most elegant woman in the daggone courtroom. Yes, ma'am, she was. Now, in the first trial, she stated that Tori was smart, driven, and engaged. Now, she did say that again, kind of just reiterating that, the unmentionable virus had really sidelined a lot of Tori's plans and things, and that, this had been a rough couple of years for Tori, but not in so many words. If in the way your grandmother kind of says your favorite Uncle Billy, who's been to prison a couple times, is just having some recent unpleasantness, if you will. Those of you who are Southern will understand that. Uh, and let's not forget Scoop and or Draco. Look, y'all, the recordings were interesting. Now, Scoop and Draco are different people, but Scoop was Tori's boyfriend, and I believe Draco was one of his friends. He again was he was not as invested in the relationship, obviously, because he was visiting another girl at the time of the incident at Six Flags. And it is very possible that Tori, using Life 360, Snapchat, Find My Location, or any of the other things that you can use for Google Foo or anything that Farrell uses, to find out that her, boyfriend, who she thinks she's in love with, is, out with another chick at an amusement park the night that she's having maybe possible side effects of, mood swings from these very potent diet pills, along with just being a daggone teenage girl. Now, Austin says that Scoop is possibly into crime and is giving Tori, access to pills and drugs and other things. Now, Scoop, for all of these things, refused to talk to the cops. And where is he not? That's right, class. He is not in court. Now we go to my other most favoritist person in this trial. Oh, come on, people. Come on, camera. I am not Dave levels of awesome at my camera yet because I only use it for murder board. And we're almost there. Ta-da! Dang it. Backwards. And for free, you get to listen to me narrate my how the hell did this work? Dr. Terry. Hashtag want to interview. Now, she is ME awesome, medical examiner awesome, and she has stated multiple times during this trial that absent the missing medical or the missing weapon, she would have ruled probably suicide. She has seen suicides like this. She has seen, I believe, 10,000 bodies in her career of 16 years. Now, the she CC'd the defense in emails in which the state tried to seem to want the ME to change her mind. The state seemed to try to do this weird thing where they wanted to discredit her on her, findings that she was leaning more towards suicide and not homicide rather than, um but still wanted, everything else that she said, like um, if the bullet had entered where it entered, then she fell down immediately. So they wanted to impeach some findings, but then affirm some findings. And if you've ever known doctors that or have friends that are doctors that go into fields where they don't have to deal with people, say like surgeons, research scientists, um, medical examiners who deal with mostly unalive people, you will find that they have more analytical minds. They don't like to be challenged once they have, and Dr. Terry seems like she goes out and investigates her, heart out, and she and the defense even did, like a floor exercise where they did, different things where she showed exactly how things would have had to be laid out for Tori to make the shot, and then how with the arm placement, while Austin could have made the shot, the arm placement would have made it difficult for him to make the shot the way it had been with that. So it She seemed very irritated with the fact that the state was trying to affirm some of her findings, but really wanted her to kind of go against her other findings, and it kind of ticked, me off too because, discount, you know, Uncle Phil was really not he he came off fairly arrogant in that exchange, and again, when you are talking to someone whose expertise is in this field, and you are trying to argue and browbeat someone who has done this research, who has seen all these bodies, who attends, I guess I mean, look, if they have an MECon, well, wait a minute, strike that. I'm probably not gonna go there because, y'all, I can't handle the pictures, but, like, I would sit with Dr. Terry, have a bourbon, maybe not a cigar, but I would listen to some stories. I'm just saying, Dr. Terry, if you want a career after you retire, YouTube is a possibility. Fireside chats with Dr. Terry, and you just tell some of your stories, minus the names. Get with me and, you know and then we have Fluck's favorite part of this trial, baby lead detective. Baby lead detective, we're gonna have to zoom out just a little so we can get her all in. Baby lead detective, and the most important thing you need to know about her is that Flux would smash, so it is Flux she is Flux approved. And, we found out from Defense Cross that this was her first case, and she fought to get this case from, another detective who was moving up somewhere. The amount of bouncing that this woman has done from maybe this is normal in Georgia police departments, so I'm not impugning or I'm not shading on this anything sort of untoward, but she's gone from, regular beat to, I think, um, major crimes or not major crimes, but like burglary and stuff to special victims units to now homicide. So this was her first case on, and she had been 2 weeks on homicide from special victim unit, and she had kind of bounced around from department to department. So this kind of comes out on Defense Cross, and she she kind of had brainstorming with other detectives to come up with the fact that this was a homicide. She told the mother, absence of really any physical evidence or anything other than their brainstorming, that this was a homicide and not a suicide in their initial interview where she was taking over the case from the first, detective, which was really rather shady to me. I mean, she did not she seemed fairly fairly levels above, maybe 1 or 2 inches above the detective in the Travis Rudolph case during direct. And then during cross, this all came out, and I was about to go full no tie Bronca, if you know what I mean. Again, Flux approved, but she had to be demonstrated what was parallel and what was perpendicular by awesome lawyer with, pens, and if you're like me and you're still traumatized from the Brad Leon case, whenever anyone pulls out a pen for a demonstrative, you get a little scared. Now, she did contradict herself heavily during cross, or the first cross, where she was the defense attorney actually got her to put herself in easily a position in which Tori would have been able to do the deed herself, where she had previously stated in direct that that was simply impossible. So it it she did not come off very credibly. She kind of fell apart on cross, and hopefully she will do a better job next time because that's it's scary. Um she did have, the magical boobs or booty and got the man to talk along with the fellow "Hi there, my," fellow kid affect, and I don't know who is in charge with hiring in Hotlanta, but okay. It was a total boob fest. Might I suggest hiring some men at some point? I'm just saying. And then we come to the MVP of the case. This man and, Doctor Lewis probably got this boy I call Austin a boy because he was a young man at the trial, but Austin is now a man, so he is now a man. This defense attorney probably got between the ME and this defense attorney probably got Austin this next mistrial. Now, this mistrial was closer. It was 8-4, and the last one was 6-6, and my gut feeling is that the prosecutor is possibly cocky enough to try to go again because he realizes it's easier to bully if it's, 10-2 next time. It's easier to bully 2 people into conforming. Although if they can no longer do the, manslaughter, it's harder to bully 2 people into a murder conviction. Or he might just count his losses and go with the 3 convictions he already has. I am not quite sure. So, however, we were on this defense attorney. This defense attorney was awesome. He has a wonderful conversational style. He, had a way of and generally it annoys me and other lawyers, but this lawyer made has a way of kind of saying a paragraph and then asking a question, but without you noticing that he said a paragraph before that, if that makes sense. Because some other lawyers will be insanely long-winded, and you're like, "Just get to the daggone point." And I didn't even realize he was doing it until almost the end of the trial, and I was like, "Wow, he is getting about a paragraph and a half in of sort of backstory about how Austin was feeling, what he was going through." And then he asks the question, and it was really cool how he was able to get Austin's backstory in without it, with it being a question, which was really interesting because normally that annoys the ever living snot out of me because I am like, I have things to do. You are killing me, Smalls. Can we hurry up? Now, and he was able to ask things in a conversational way, not in a condescending way, and in a way that it was almost self-deprecating, like, "You know what? I didn't understand this. I'm a bit confused. Could you help me out?" Which is very disarming. It's very disarming to, I'm sure, especially the mother. You know what? That has to be a very delicately handled witness that you have to be able to, and he's like, "Ma'am, I just have a couple things I was confused about. Could I ask you some questions?" It's very disarming. It's not hostile, and he never even got really hostile with even the defense or, the detective who was kinda shenanigan-y, to be honest, because she was a little bit like, "What's parallel? What's perpendicular?" And he had to pull out pens, and you're like, "Oh my goodness, I feel embarrassed for my gender." But it's a very disarming sort of style, and I really liked it. And you're like, "Wow, this guy's really personable," and he flirted his ever living buns off with the Emmy. I don't know if they are friends outside, and he took it as a personal affront that, discount Uncle Phil tried to make his friend, change her mind, but he had a hate eggplant for Dr. Phil because he had been kind of congenial, disarming, self-deprecating, like, "I just don't understand. Can you help me out?" "I don't deal with foolishness. I get a little confused if there's more than 3 things," that kinda thing. And then it came to his close, and shots, y'all, shots were fired. Oh, and we had to call the burn unit for Uncle Phil because he done called him out, called him a no workaholic. Done talked about his martini lunches, done talked about his vacation home, called him everything but a child of God, held church up in there. Whew, it was I don't know. I mean, he and Dr. Terry, look, y'all, I'm just saying, ABC, NBC, CBS, Hollywood, look, I know y'all are struggling. I know you're struggling and you need programming and Hollywood writers, well, they live in Hollywood. Need I say more? But this defense attorney, uh, Dr. Terry and me, Fireside Chats. It's the show that America didn't know they always needed. Contact me. I'm just saying. Anywho, back to our regular scheduled program, not grifting for me. So he held church and close, and you could tell that Uncle Phil was pissed, and he was trying his best to like, well, I am not here to even like I'm not even gonna respond to this because it's superfluous and I don't even like my feelings don't even care really even like it doesn't even hurt my feelings. Like I'm not even gonna say anything about my feelings because they're not even hurt. It's like, okay, well, we've spent like good hour talking about your feelings. Can we not? So yeah, he definitely shook and rattled the state, which is what you have to do. And he did like I said, held church. So if you've been in a Baptist church, there's a little bit of volume change, but it didn't sound like shouting because the state's attorney tried to do kind of the change in volume, the shout thing, and it came off as a shout. Like it startled me, and I don't like that. I have a very negative response to that. And if anything else hadn't turned me off to Uncle Phil thus far, that really did. And he handled shenanigans well because the at the end of the case, as the jury was going to start deliberations, the defendant's mother decided to either take video or pictures of the jury, and the judge's rule has been to power off your phone completely during this trial. So the mother's phone was confiscated until the conclusion of the case. And I'm sorry, this wasn't before it was before the deliberations, it was before the closing statements. So this was the night before the closing statements. The state had rested. The defense was pretty much knew it was going to just rest. Austin was, thank God, not going to talk any daggone more, as per usual. So Austin had already been taken back to the holding section, and uh, they were just kind of chit chatting, and everyone was leaving the court. And I guess one of the sharp eyed bailiffs found out that the mom had been taking pictures. Well, so then the Judge is Judge Sassy Glasses was like, "Oh, hell no." So, she got her phone taken away. The mother has a contempt hearing on 9 on this coming Wednesday, which we will be covering because I believe the state has until Wednesday to decide whether we are gonna go for round 3 or we're simply going to charge him for the 3 crimes that he was found guilty of in the first trial and have that be done. Now, we've looked up, and I think that he might be time served. The other factor going into that is that Austin has filed a speedy trial clause or what lawyery thing, speedy trial lawyery thing. So they have to get, I believe by calculations, have to get everything done should they try him again by either September or December. And I don't know how the courts in Georgia run, but I don't know if that's possible. That being said, I think this state's attorney is arrogant enough to try it again. So I don't know, it might come down to will the state want to expend more resources on it? Will the public outcry be such that they, require it? I don't know. But all in all, this case was really interesting to go over. It was definitely one that was a lot more interesting than you thought it was going to be going into it because you definitely started to wonder how you could see it from both ways. And we had some people on both sides of the chat that really started out with, just hearing the initial facts and thought, okay, well, you know, he lied to the mom. He is totally, totally guilty. And then you had some of us that thought, okay, well, he's guilty of being a jerk face. That's no lie, but he's not guilty of murder, maybe. Or, you know, had I think had the wording of Georgia's manslaughter been any different to where it didn't have that, crime of passion thing, I think Austin would probably be getting, manslaughter because I think it's much easier for you to get a directed verdict or not a directed verdict, to get a compromise verdict, for all of that. And again, with what this case kind of goes over, if you are in a dark place, if you know someone that you think might be struggling, look, sometimes the biggest smiles hide something, just check in on your friends, check in on your family. Um, I feel kind of odd saying this as I'm looking at a guy in a green bikini, but you guys, just check in on people. Look, this life is hard. It really, some days can suck all the donkey balls. They really can. And you just need a friend. This chat is great. I'm sure if you tell them you're having a rough day, we are here. And always remember, I have to tell my youngest daughter this, just because you dance to the beat of your own drum, your music isn't noise just because other people can't hear the melody. Just means your song's bigger than them. So keep on dancing, keep on living that music. And keep coming back here because while you may not be everyone's cup of tea, there are plenty of cup of teas here. So have a great day.